Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm Jess Arce with Lexia Learners. And here today with me is Elizabeth, who is my collaborative executive assistant from New York. And she's got lots of snow where she is. And then Miss T, one of our wonderful tutors, is here with us today. And she's live from Santa Fe, New Mexico, where it's cold. Brr. And I am currently live in Las Vegas, where it is raining. First time it's rained here in like 10 months. So anyway, we're having all sorts of different weather. So today we are going to, Miss Elizabeth is actually going to head off interviewing me. And so I will hand it over to Miss Elizabeth.
Well, hello, Jess. It's a pleasure to have you here and to be with you. Oh my goodness, it's always fun when we're hanging out and talking and learning together. I think that you do a great job at holding me accountable, especially as an executive virtual assistant and even as we're building out. So I have a couple questions for you today. Our topic is not letting dyslexia define you. And I don't think that you've ever let dyslexia define you or what you do. So we're going to start with, what was school like for you as a kid?
So as a kid, I went to private school, and I didn't learn to read until after I was held back. So I struggled a lot with that. I was strong in math, and so that was a skill that I was really good at. But reading was something I couldn't do. And so because I went to a small private school, when I got held back, everyone in the school knew that I was held back. So that made it really hard because I was embarrassed. And the way I responded to that was by acting out. And it didn't dawn on me until a couple of years ago that that was why I had such behavioral problems in school. So I actually spent most of my second time in third grade outside the principal's office, and I was an errand runner for her. And but my mom sent me to a tutor after I was held back, and I did learn how to read. I also had a private tutor at my school, so I was getting lots of help. I don't know that any of it was Orton Gillingham, but at some point it clicked. And so I learned how to read the second time around. And because my math skills were so good, I was able to be skipped to the fifth grade. So I never went to fourth grade. So that's why I mentioned that I went to private school, because had I gone to public school, that wouldn't have been my experience at all, because public school is not going to shuffle you around from grade to grade. I mean, yeah, they'll hold you back, but they're not going to put you in the right grade once you are caught up with the areas that you struggle.
Now, that's very interesting because you're the owner of Lexia Learners and you're the one who's really been the leader in all of your development and with the tutors and the programs that you've been creating. But you yourself have dyslexia, is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. So, what are some tricks you use to accomplish so much in school and then as an adult?
Well, for me, I don't know about in school that I really used any tricks. When I was younger, anyway, I just, I muddled through school. But actually, by the time I got to high school, one of the tricks I used for literature class was reading the footnotes. What are they called? Um, the Spark Notes.
Oh,
So I would read those instead of the actual books. And I would get enough information that I was able to write my papers. And my writing skills have always been really good, even though I really didn't understand. I couldn't remember like nouns or pronouns or adjectives or verbs, I didn't completely understand the concept of the terms. However, I was able to write very well. And so as long as I read the cliff notes, I could write a good paper. And I think it was probably when I went to college, I started, when I needed to study for a test, I would write and rewrite and rewrite what I needed to study. And now I understand that that's because I am kinesthetic. So the process of writing it over and over helped it to stick in my brain versus just reading it or hearing it.
Did you always know that you were dyslexic?
No, I did not know I was dyslexic. As a kid, they said I had a reading disability. My reading disability is dyslexia, but it wasn't until I started tutoring my own kids that I realized that my struggles were because I was dyslexic.
So, what advice do you give parents on how to relate to help their kids when their children are experiencing reading or math problems?
Well, the number one advice is to hire us to tutor their kids because we use programs that work well to teach kids how to read or how to spell or how to do math. Um, but another option is to, well, you've really been doing a great job of using some of the information that I've provided you with to help your daughter learn how to read. So I will use that, some of those things as examples. You guys have been using different colors for writing the letters so that they stand out. So one recommendation would be to use one color for the consonants and one color for the vowels so that they stand out and they can really see the difference. Another thing is to let them listen to audiobooks. For math, if there's fewer math problems on the page, you can blow the math problems up. They are less stressed about it being so overwhelming. Getting the teachers to make accommodations like fewer spelling tests or I mean fewer spelling words on the spelling test. Another thing too is to if your child goes to private school, it's easier to get them to do this than public school, but getting them to stop giving them spelling words altogether because really dyslexic kids, all they're doing is memorizing the words long enough to pass the test. And they don't remember it typically a week later or 2 weeks later when they do the review questions or the review test. Typically, they will have forgotten the entire test. So it's not benefiting them to have these spelling words. But like I said, most of the time, public school, they will just give them fewer words versus stopping that altogether. One of the things I wish I knew when my kids were younger and in traditional school was it's giving them accommodations isn't a cop out. It's I used to think um that they were just making it too easy for my daughter and I didn't understand that it was making it so that she was able to really grasp what was being taught to her rather than overwhelming her with too much information.
I'd have to agree with that. So as I've been implementing the tips that you've given me for my daughter, the spelling the spelling words, I separate them. So we get about 10 and instead of having 10 on a page, I do 5 on a page and 5 on a page. We've been doing those other colors and then even with the math because when she's writing, she doesn't want to keep things on a line. I've I've made it so I'm rewriting the problems because we do remote learning, which is like they give us a syllabus and they give us all of the documents that we have to do for the day, and then we have to fill them out and take pictures. Now, I could just print them, but I don't. Instead, I use your advice and I write things in colors and I give her more space. And because I'm doing that, she's had the ability to really focus in on the numbers and what she needs to do, and even has gotten better with her spelling tests because they still give a spelling test once a week and she's covering it over and over again. So, what advice would you give to teachers specifically? Because I know for myself, like I'm doing this one-on-one with her and it's pretty work intensive. And when you're working with a group of students and you're a teacher, you're probably working with anywhere between 15 to 25, maybe in some places even 30 kids. So what would you do in that situation?
Um, well, some places have as many as 40 kids in a classroom.
Wow.
And um, it's hard to be able to focus on one student. But I mean, one of the things that I would recommend would be to understand that that person is trying, because very often teachers think that the kids are just being lazy, or they're just misbehaving, or they don't want to do it. And it's not that they don't want to do it, it's just sometimes it's really hard for them to do it. And when they feel like they don't have any support, then they just give up. And so then they are going to start acting up. So giving the kids accommodations is one thing. Understanding that dyslexia really is a thing, because so many teachers don't believe that dyslexia is a real thing, and educating themselves about what dyslexia is, and understanding the that things are going to be harder, and that they need more time to get work done would make it a much easier, much more comfortable situation. And not call on the kids to read out loud. I remember when I was young, and we would have to read out loud. And when I was a kid, they'd go around in a circle, so you knew what you were going to have to read. Now they have popcorn reading, so you don't even know when it's your turn. But when I was a kid, I would read ahead to the section that was going to be my paragraph to read, and I would practice reading that over and over again. So I never heard what anyone else was reading, because I was so busy just trying to practice it so that I would sound okay. And then that's not learning. That's just, memorizing to perform. So I think really stopping having kids read out loud, particularly dyslexic kids, is is something. And also, one of the hard things is the way they have, at least in California, the way that they have the books set up is it's A through Z. And so everyone in the class knows who is reading the lower level books. And so then they're embarrassed by that. So if there's a way to not set them up like that, then it would be less embarrassing for the kids. Because self-esteem is one of the things that's really affected by kids with dyslexia. When they come to us for tutoring, it doesn't matter if they're 5 or 50, their self-esteem is so affected, and their confidence in themselves is really affected. And so they find ways to try to hide their struggles by acting silly, maybe being the class clown, or acting up, because they'd rather get in trouble for misbehaving than be embarrassed by the fact that they can't read that paragraph.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, dyslexia doesn't just go away, right? That's a misconception. I think that that's a myth.
Yeah, definitely. No, it doesn't go away. As we get older, we learn to cope. But my mother, who was diagnosed with dyslexia in the 40s, and now she's in her 80s, she's noticing that she's starting to struggle with remembering her alphabet again, which she had difficulty with when she was younger. And so, as we get older, we start to forget things. So it's kind of like this hill, when you're younger, it's really hard, and then you learn how to cope with it, and then you just stay at that point, and then you start getting older, and it gets harder again. But we definitely, dyslexic people are usually of higher intelligence, or at least average intelligence, and so we figure out ways to cope. We figure out coping mechanisms that really take us through life.
That's very interesting. What do you want non-dyslexic individuals to know about dyslexia?
um well, that dyslexic people aren't dumb. um that would be probably my biggest thing. I remember when my daughter was identified as dyslexic, a relative said, "Wow, she's dyslexic. She doesn't seem dumb." And so that's one of my biggest things, which I just incorporated Lexia Learners, and actually our corporation name is IAmNotDumb Inc. Because so many people just assume that we are dumb, and we're not. And unfortunately, dyslexic people then own that themselves, and they start to feel like they're dumb, because when you're told something over and over again, you start to live that. And so yeah, that's my biggest takeaway I would like people to get about dyslexic people.
So, how do you not let dyslexia define you?
For me, it's been my driving force. I was told when I was in high school, I wanted to go to a different high school. Um, and they told me I was not college material, and they did not accept me. So I ended up back in private school, because I was in high school. Um, and I ended up going to a private high school that um, was a better fit for me. And I went to college for fashion design initially, and then I changed my major a couple of times, from fashion design to history to education. And I've also taken entrepreneurial courses. But I don't let my struggles hold me back. um I still don't enjoy reading a lot, uh, but I've learned ways to. I mean, with technology today, it's so much easier to get by without that. And so um, I don't let it be an excuse to not do my best, or push forward, or continue to grow. And that's always been my driving force. Is I I want to be my best. And for me, I didn't like working for people. Um, and I didn't like proving to employers that I was capable of doing something. So I have been self employed since I had my first child, when I was 22 years old. And I have had multiple businesses at one time, in order to be able to afford to um, provide for my family. And so, again, like, I wasn't going to let employers define me. And I have always had high standards of what I want for an income. Um, I When I was in high school, I was making really good money, selling shirts for my gym teacher, who quit his job as a gym teacher and started a shirt business. And he paid me $15 an hour in high school. So that really set my standards high, for that. I don't need to earn minimum wage. And so, working for myself, maybe sometimes I actually was earning about minimum wage, because I was working so many hours. However, my monthly income has always been more than that, because I have chosen to move forward working for myself, versus letting someone tell me how much my experience should be paid.
So, with that in mind, what do you do for a living now? We talked about how you're the owner of Lexia Learners. What is it? What is a typical day for you?
Well, a typical day for me right now is a little bit crazier than I expect it to be in the near future. But right now, I get up at 6:30 in the morning and I listen to inspirational talks. Or my this morning, my coach has a call at 6:30 in the morning. Then I start journaling. Oh, and I drink my celery water, which is wonderful. That just cleans out your system and keeps you going really well. I highly recommend celery water. Uh, and and let's see what else. I've been trying to start going for walks. I'm not one for exercising, but you need to keep your mind fresh and your body, strong. So your mind's strong and your body's strong. So I've been walking at least 3 times a week. Hopefully I'll be doing it every day in the near future. And then um, on Wednesdays and Thursdays, I have a student at 9 o'clock. So I start tutoring at 9 o'clock. I am personally phasing out myself as a tutor. So I'm down to, I only have 5 students right now. When I was a full-time tutor in the past, I basically would tutor from 9 a.m. until about 6 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Um, but so now I only tutor about 4 hours a day. And when I'm not tutoring, I am working on administrative things, um, like
You're actually tutoring more tutors. You're expanding your business at this point, right? Is that correct?
that is correct. So yeah, but I'm not doing that on an average day. But but and soon I won't be doing the admin work anymore because we'll be hiring more administrative people to help grow the business. So the goal is to have um, lots of tutors who are trained and able to take over doing the tutoring so that we can help more families, because as one person you can only help 10 to 15 kids, adults, families at a time. But if we have 10 to 15 tutors, we can help, a couple of hundred kids learn how to read or spell or do math. And then one of my goals, once we start to really expand, is to give back. And so that looks like I want to be able to help people with who are in juvenile delinquent halls or whatever it's called. Um, Teach them how to read and spell so that they can get out of the cycle of being going to um, prison, because I can't remember the number exactly, but I think it's like 45% of people in prison are dyslexic. So if we can help them when they're younger and they're just starting to get in trouble, then we can reduce the amount of people who end up in prison because they couldn't read well. And like me, maybe they felt like they shouldn't take a minimum wage job taking out trash. So instead, they're like, oh, let me go rob this bank and make tons of money, right? So, so if they can read or they can spell well, then they can probably get a much better job than what they would be able to get if they didn't learn to read and spell. So that's something that hopefully in 2021 we will be able to start working with kids in juvenile halls to learn to read and spell and do math.
That is such an audacious goal. So the other thing that we're doing is tonight is is actually the Lexia Learners Lounge. And this space is to provide individuals, whether it's adults or children, with additional knowledge about dyslexia and See, this is where you're going to have to help me, Jess, because I know that we also help individuals with dysgraphia, right? And then say it, you're going to have to say it for me because
Dyscalc dyscalculia.
there you go, dyscalculia. And Stephanie Henry, she came in as we're doing things live. I'm not sure if she wants to say something. You could potentially unmute. And next month, we're going to meet again where it's the third Thursday of each month, correct? At 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And who's going to be joining us? Hey, Stephanie, it's awesome to see you. Marvelous. Thank you for joining us. We are live. You want to say anything? Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't necessarily prepared, but never one to miss an opportunity. I actually am dyslexic and dyscalculate, mostly dyscalculate, is primarily. I'm leaning more into just neurodivergent as the term to kind of encompass everything that kind of comes with that. But there's a lot of different learning styles, and I'm super excited to have engaged with a group like this that's offering opportunities and having this conversation. And I think definitely going into the 2020s and the next decade, having conversations about the different learning styles and the values to them, not just the challenges, is a conversation that I'm looking forward to. I struggled a lot in school, even though I was a high performer, especially with numbers. And I was lucky to have a few teachers who worked with me and managed to scrape by. But I think we can do a lot better for future generations. And that's why I'm here, to share my experience and to talk about, the challenges that I've had and some of the resources that have been really helpful. So thanks for letting me drop in.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us and for sharing all on the spot there.
So, what is one of the tips that you can give us real quick before we wind up ending the live, and just tells us who our next guest is for next month? What's a tip?
A tip is to find what works for you, and to find those systems that work for you, and to be confident, and to be to step forward for yourself in those. I struggled for a long time letting other people determine how I was going to process things and how I communicated things, and that was a challenge. I took my Gallup Strength Finders, which is another evaluation, and it helped me really kind of embrace more of how I process things, and then find more productive ways to communicate that instead of trying to make myself fit other people's expectations.
That's great. Yeah. We really, a lot of times people try to put us in boxes, and we are out of the box thinkers, out of the box doers, and if we don't let them keep us pushed in the box, we can make so many things happen. I mean, Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, Henry Ford, they were all dyslexic, and they all did amazing things, but no one expected anything of them. And I know Henry Ford didn't go to high school, and Albert Einstein didn't even end up going to elementary school. He was kicked out in kindergarten. So yeah.
I even heard that Cher was also an individual that had dyslexia. And it's amazing to me how musically inclined there are some individuals, like Jessica Simpson just came out and said that she was also dyslexic. So the our ability is what we can do is an amazing thing, and that's where next month, Jess, who are we going to have with us, and what is he doing? What is he going to speak about?
So next month, Danny's going to be joining us, and Danny works for the state of California, doing coordinating healthcare, and he's going to be talking about the requests that he made at the beginning of COVID and receiving accommodations at the workplace, and the rights that dyslexics have, that they're entitled to get accommodations. But it can be really scary to ask your work for these things. So he's going to talk about his experience receiving help and accommodations when COVID hit, because the dynamics changed for him. He was, everyone was at home, and so he had to read a lot more than he did when he was going into the office. So pretty exciting to have him join us next month. And then really soon, hopefully, Super Dyslexia Girl will be able to make it. She wasn't feeling well today. So we will plan on seeing her soon. And she's going to talk to us about her experience going to community college and then university, and the accommodations that she got in school. And then that's what we have planned for the next couple of months. And then we'll have more people come and talk to us about their experiences, both as adult dyslexics and parents of kids with dyslexia, or the experiences people had in their childhood being dyslexic. So really hope that you guys can join us, and we can make this more of a collaborative effort. My idea has been to be a support system for dyslexic people, because what I found is when students start working with us, they don't realize that they're not alone. They think that they're the only ones who struggle the way that they're struggling. And so when they discover that I too am dyslexic, they usually feel better about the fact that they're not alone. And my kids were very fortunate to have each other as a support system, because 3 of my 4 kids are dyslexic. One of them, we didn't even know he was dyslexic, but we knew he had dysgraphia. And so but all of my kids knew that they weren't alone, that because we talked very candidly about it. And a lot of times people don't like to talk about it. Parents want to be hush hush, and it just seems so much easier on the kids once they know why they're struggling and that they're not alone. So that's the idea of this group, is just to let people know that they have a support system and that they can talk to other people candidly about what's going on.
So then I'm going to end with this. Miss T, as a tutor with us, and after listening to all of this that we've been going through, what is your biggest takeaway from joining us in the lounge tonight?
Okay. Sorry. My biggest takeaway, I would have to say, is really understanding how important like an individualistic approach is when it comes to helping people with these kind of neurodivergencies, whether it be dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. It's about not just the accommodation, but more so seeing the individual and their approach and their learning style, and formatting whatever task, school, work, whatever it is, towards them, as opposed to a general take.
I love that individualistic approach that you've learned from tonight. I think that is a powerful thing. Stephanie joining us this evening and telling us of her own experience, even if though it was briefly, and Jess with her experience, my daughter with hers, and everybody else. We all do have a very unique style of learning when we boils down to it. And there's lots of systems and tips and tricks that we can use and utilize, but it comes down to us seeing each other as individuals, as people, and as people who are all worthy and gifted, and we are outside of the box thinkers. So I think that is a blessing for all of us to really settle in with, especially as we're learning and we're growing. I'm going to say it's been a fabulous evening spending time with you guys, eye to eye. And then I hope that all of our watchers have enjoyed this conversation. We hope to see you again next month. I know that Jess is going to continue doing lives here and there in the group on the
Every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern, I will be doing lives. So
Wonderful, wonderful. So we will catch you then. And in the meantime, I want to say, and peace be with you. Good night, everybody.